Good morning, everyone. North Carolina is about to face the power of Hurricane Florence. The time to prepare is almost over. This morning's forecast shows the storm is only hours away. Powerful winds will reach our beaches and sounds tomorrow morning. North Carolina, my message is clear. Disaster is at the doorstep and is coming in. If you're on the coast, there is still time to get out safely. No possession is worth your life. For those not under an evacuation order, finish your preparations today if you haven't already. Move to safety if your home is at risk. Bring in supplies if it's not. Plan to be without power for days. Understand that the rain may last for days and not hours. And this may be a marathon, not a sprint. This storm threatens life. The forecast shows a storm surge higher than many homes. The National Weather Service has just said it will be unbelievably damaging, and they can't emphasize that enough. Violent winds can blow down power lines and trees. Heavy, sustained rain that can flood our rivers and low-lying ground will be coming. And expect this storm to batter our state for days. Floodplain experts at the North Carolina Emergency Management have been modeling the storm's projected impacts. And from the storm surge alone, tens of thousands of structures are expected to be flooded in North Carolina. We are sharing that information with local officials so that they can prepare. Shelters began opening yesterday, with more opening today to take people in who've been displaced by evacuations. There are at least 16 shelters that are open now. And we are truly grateful for the volunteers, the Red Cross, and others who are helping us. I've authorized more North Carolina National Guard soldiers to report for duty. By 7 p.m. today, 2,800 soldiers will be on active duty, joined by even more on standby. These soldiers are directed to preserve life and safety, and provide route clearance of roads and support communications and logistics. Prisons and jails in vulnerable areas are being evacuated as well. Long-term care facilities have been urged to work with local emergency management officials to ensure resident and patient safety. Today, our state parks and museums are closed, state universities have canceled classes, and many public schools are closing as well, plus providing their buildings as shelters. No matter where this storm comes ashore, it will have widespread, significant impacts in North Carolina. The coast will feel the blast first thing in the morning, with damaging, life-threatening surge, winds, and rain. Those of you in central North Carolina should be prepared to feel the impact of the storm from Thursday night through the weekend due to the sustained rainfall and persistent wind. And western North Carolina residents should be prepared for heavy rain. As we remember earlier this year, that can trigger mudslides and road closings. In short, every county and every person in North Carolina needs to stay alert and to take this storm seriously. Yesterday, I ordered a state evacuation of North Carolina's barrier islands from the Virginia border to the South Carolina line. And thanks to our local partners, many evacuation orders are in place for other areas. And I urge residents to heed those orders. For those not under evacuation orders, gather your emergency supplies if you haven't already. Food, water, flashlights, extra batteries, medications, important documents if you need to evacuate. Remember to make plans for your pets and clear your yard of debris that can cause damage in high winds. Finally, download the Ready NC app for updates and to learn the weather about the storm, and call 211 for information or to connect you with local resources. I want to thank everyone across our state helping us get ready for this storm. And I want to introduce part of North Carolina's team here to provide input for you. To my far right here is Mike Sprayberry, Director of Emergency Management. Next is Colonel Glenn McNeil, the Commander of the State Highway Patrol. Immediately behind me is Dr. Mandy Cohen, the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services. We also have Secretary Jim Trogdon, the Secretary of Transportation, to my immediate left. We have our Federal Coordinating Officer from FEMA, Albie Lewis, who is here with us in the middle there. And of course, we have the General of the North Carolina National Guard, Major General Gregory Lusk, who's here. So I'm going to recognize some of these for updates, and then we will take your questions. So Mike Sprayberry, we'll begin with you.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning, everyone. We continue to urge all North Carolina residents and visitors to comply with local evacuation orders from our local jurisdictions. I'd also like to thank our county partners for all their hard work as we prepare for the impacts of Hurricane Florence. The State Emergency Operations Center is activated at level 2. We anticipate going to a level 1 full up tonight. Of course, we're on a 24-hour schedule. We are ramping up with additional National Guard, as you've just heard the Governor refer to, as well as more swiftwater rescue boats, search and rescue task forces, helicopters, ambulances, and a whole host of other assets to include commodities. We positioned some of these assets forward, and we also have staged others locally in Garner. Our federal, state, volunteer, and private sector partners stand ready to provide the full spectrum of disaster response capability to Hurricane Florence. And thank you very much for your support today.
Colonel McNeil, the Commander of the State Highway Patrol.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning. The State Highway Patrol continues to make appropriate preparations for this powerful storm as it approaches. Troopers statewide have been placed on alert to ensure that they are ready should they be called in the need at a moment's occurrence. In part, this allows us to be readily organized and allocate members to the affected areas. Yesterday, in partnership with the Department of Transportation, and we remain to do so today, members assisted with the evacuation process along our ferry terminals and along the Outer Banks. Additionally, the patrol is removing abandoned vehicles and disabled vehicles from along our evacuation routes to ensure that our roadways and shoulders are clear for motorists and emergency responders. The patrol at this time has 14 squads of troopers statewide that have been assembled and identified and are ready to deploy to the areas of immediate need after the landfall. Additionally, the patrol has 4 squads of personnel that will be reporting to Wake County for briefing and assignment. The patrol's civilian staff are assisting with telecommunications, and our network technicians are working diligently behind the scenes to ensure that proper response procedures are in place for our state. I will assure you that every member of the State Highway Patrol stands ready to support when the need arises. We will continue to work with our federal and state law enforcement partners to ensure that our public safety remains our highest priorities. I ask our motoring public in advance to please do not call 911 or Star HP for roadway conditions. Leave these lines of communication open for emergency situations. Up-to-date roadway conditions can be found by visiting drivenc.gov. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Colonel. Our Secretary of Department of Health and Human Services, Dr. Mandy Cohen.
Good morning. Thank you, Governor. You know, as Secretary of Health and Human Services, our top priority is the health and safety of all North Carolinians. So I have 3 messages for everyone to remember today. First, as the Governor mentioned, please make sure you have food, water, and importantly, any medications with you as you may evacuate. Make sure to refill your prescriptions now, as we may not have access to pharmacies as we go forward through this storm. Second, do not drive through standing water. That was the #1 source of death we saw in Hurricane Matthew. Do not drive through standing water. And then third, please do not use gas-powered generators inside your home. Deadly carbon monoxide chemicals could be a threat. So make sure you have food, water, and medication. Please do not drive through standing water, and please make sure not to use gas-powered generators inside your home. Know that we at the department, in coordination with this great team here at the command center, are working 24/7 to set up shelters, make sure we have the necessary medical personnel in place, communicating with all of the local partners. If you are a Medicaid beneficiary, make sure you know even if you are evacuating, you can see a doctor even if it is out of state. You can get your prescriptions filled early, do that today. And if you have medical equipment that needs electricity, please get in contact with your local DSS offices today. And then lastly, if you are on food assistance, make sure you know that you can continue to use those cards at any authorized retailer. If you have food loss, know that we will be able to do some replacement there. And lastly, with long-term care facilities, as the governor mentioned, we want to see long-term care facilities and adult care homes activate those emergency plans that they've worked on, those in impacted areas. There's new flexibilities that they can take advantage of to make sure folks are in safe areas. Thank you.
Our Secretary of Transportation, General Jim Trockner.
Thank you, Governor. Yesterday and today, the Department of Transportation is actively managing our evacuation routes. Yesterday, for example, on I-40, we averaged 50 miles an hour for the entire daylight hours operating time. We're going to continue to do that today on all of those routes, to include I-40, US 74, 70, all of those that we're using to support evacuation operations. Overnight, we had 6 motor vehicle incidents that we worked with Highway Patrol to quickly clear. Had 0 impact on our evacuation operations. So we'll continue that monitoring and actively managing that today. In addition, our maintenance crews are readying their equipment and materials. There are also, many of our maintenance offices will be conducting swift water rescue training today in preparation for the flooding events that we anticipate to come. Today at noon, 30 of our DMV offices, those primarily east of I-95, will be closing today, and we plan on phasing in closing of DMV offices as the storm progresses. So check the website for current update time on operation hours of our DMV offices. And then finally, our ferry division suspended ferry routes at the end of the day yesterday, and are moving to their secure mooring locations today until the storm passes, and they'll reestablish those operations as soon as possible. So we're continuing monitoring our evacuation routes and continuing preparation operations for this storm.
We appreciate our FEMA partners, and we have with us our Federal Coordinating Officer for FEMA, Albie Lewis.
Thank you, Governor. For me, it's a pleasure to be here. We've been here from the start when the EOC first opened. The partnership is very solid. I appreciate Mike and his crew. We've done pre-planning for the event and have pre-positioned significant amount of supplies and other commodities, as well as such things as urban search and rescue teams, high water vehicles, swift water rescue teams, radios, and a lot of other things, such as aerial platforms also. I believe we are prepared for the storm, and we're here to support the state 100%. Thank you.
And our commander of our North Carolina National Guard, Major General Gregory Lusk. General Lusk.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I think it's something very appropriate that we all should just realize just for a brief moment the very selfless individuals that comprise of this entire enterprise, from the local level all the way up to the state. Those potential victims of this storm that are right now focusing their main priority on taking care of the needs of our fellow citizens across the state. To that, the governor has authorized 2,800 additional, by the end of the day, 2,800 National Guardsmen to be on duty. Indeed, going through that exact thing that I just described. They spent the last day or so getting their personal affairs in order, and they will be reporting to armories across the state this evening. And we'll be in a great position in order to respond to the needs of North Carolina as this storm lifts and we're able to get out into the area. We can only imagine how arduous the task may be, but we'll be prepared, from anything assisting DOT with clearance of roads to helping our first responders and our emergency personnel get into places in order to focus on the saving of lives initially, and then getting North Carolina back to the point where people can get in and out of areas that are impacted. So, pending any of your questions, sir, thank you.
Thank you, General. We appreciate all of our partners, local, state, and federal, and we will now take questions that you might have.
Morning, Governor. We've heard of some reports of gas stations being without gas due to high demand, particularly in the potentially affected areas. What is your understanding of the supplies in the east, and will they be replenished before the storm, or do people just need to accept the fact that they won't be able to get gas?
I think that supplies are pretty good, it is my understanding. The gas stations had a run with sometimes 3 to 4 times the business that they normally have. So it is my understanding that distribution is good right now. Right, Mike?
Roger that,
Yep.
sir.
Okay.
Governor, you mentioned
Yes.
these 16 shelters that are open. I'm sure the number is fluid. Do you have a sense of how many people are in these shelters right now, and what is the capacity for them, if you know, collectively?
Mike, if you could give report on that.
So we know that there's, the last count that I had was about 4,000 people in shelters, but that number is fluctuating. And it's, as you know, it's not a static number. People are coming in and coming out. We're anticipating opening more shelters today, and we're in the process of uploading and updating all of that information on our Ready NC app right now. So I would say by around lunchtime, you should have a better understanding of about how many folks we have and how many shelters we have. And I would just ask you to be patient, because what happens is our local partners have to load that into our system to make it visible to us, and so sometimes they're very busy and it can be a little bit behind the power curve, but we're getting there.
Hi, my name is Zara Hirji. I'm a reporter for BuzzFeed News. You had mentioned that some of the prisons and jails in the vulnerable areas are being evacuated. Can you provide some numbers on how many of these facilities you're talking about and how far along in the evacuations they are?
I think these were occurring yesterday. I think the figure would be in the hundreds. Noel, would you think that's right? Probably in the hundreds, taken to safer and secure locations. Yes.
Governor, we know that in North Carolina, particularly the central region, there's been already issues from Matthew with dams and communities having some fears about that now that we're expecting a lot of flooding. How are those communities dealing, and what can they do at this hour to prevent any further flooding or issues?
I know we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers. Mike, you might want to give them a little detail on that.
Yes, sir. So we have an Army Corps of Engineers team here with us at the state EOC, and we're monitoring all of the high hazard dams, and we understand that our local partners do have concerns about dams, and we would just ask them to be watchful so that we can help them if any dam breaches and to report it immediately. Right now, the Corps is not doing any significant water releases based on the amount of rainfall that we anticipate coming in for this event. So we are watching this very carefully. We also have dam safety personnel here with us, and so it's a complete team effort.
Hi, Do we know how many folks are still in areas that are affected by a mandatory evacuation order, whether it be the state order along the barrier islands or some of the local orders? Do we have any idea how many have and have not heeded that?
Mike, you want to take that?
That's a very difficult number to obtain because, as you know, and just anecdotally, it's very hard to find out how many people have decided to stay. They don't report to anyone, and so we have noticed that there have been a large amount of folks heeding the order. And so and the governor issued an executive order yesterday, as he mentioned, for the barrier islands, and it is our desire that all of those people would be moving off the islands smartly, because we want everybody to be off those islands today, and we hope that they would heed those other evacuation orders at the local level for mainland as well.
I've been talking to some of the local officials, and we know how a lot of coastal North Carolinians are. They've been through storms and nor'easters and hurricanes, and many of them think they can ride it out. I do sense that people are feeling different about this storm, as they should. We need to heed the warnings of the National Weather Service, particularly regarding storm surge and the high winds, and we are encouraging people not to ride out this monster. I think a lot of people that might normally stay through a hurricane have recognized that this one's different. You're always going to have some that don't. This cone of uncertainty as to where this storm will meander, we still don't know yet. Things can still change, but we do know that this is going to be a significant event for our coastal area. If it does track a little southward, we know the north end of the storm is going to be the worst. So we need to heed the call, and we're going to continue to encourage people to follow those evacuation orders.
Governor Cooper, Sam DeGray with the Asheville Citizen-Times. The World Equestrian Games in the western part of the state are underway. Will the preparations for this hurricane siphon resources away from thinking about what's happening there?
All of our departments have gotten what they need. I think some resources were shifted from that area of the state in order to make sure that we had enough resources here. And I do not know how the weather will affect. I think that they will be making that call as things move forward. But we have the resources we need, and we are on the ready.
Governor, ABC 11 Eyewitness News, what are the preparations for power plants or coal plants and nuclear plants? What preparations they're taking to ensure the safety of the plants?
I've talked to the CEO of Duke Energy. She says that they are taking all the necessary preparations to protect property. They've also brought in people from all over the country to help with making sure that people get their power back as soon as possible after the storm. Mike, do you have anything specifically on that you want to add?
Just to add that we do have representatives from Duke Energy and the electric co-ops here with us. We do have representatives from the FEMA radiological section, and we do have the Nuclear Regulatory Commission in here with us as the storm passes, and they will be able to provide us immediate advice and guidance on anything that would ever come up. And so we don't anticipate anything, but we're well positioned.
Governor, a recent report just talked about FEMA's funding, $10 million of it going towards immigration efforts. Are you at all concerned about funding during or after this event as well for FEMA, if they could speak to that report?
I've talked with FEMA Administrator Brock Long. I know that Mike continues to talk with him. We have our FEMA people embedded here with us. I've taken a trip to Fort Bragg to see the significant resources that have been placed there. I'll be heading to Kinston today to view additional resources. I've spoken with the President. Our federal partners are promising us that we will have what we need with this storm. We expect that to happen. We will hold them to it. We know how critical this is for the people of North Carolina. We've had a good relationship with FEMA in the past, and we expect that to continue.
I also want wanted to ask about the relationship, you mentioned federal partners with the EPA, and EPA official yesterday had mentioned that there are 9 Superfund sites across the storm area. That's not just in North Carolina, but if you could talk about any that are in the state and what preparations are being done.
I know that our Department of Environmental Quality, Secretary Regan, is ready to help with any environmental issues that we find as a result of this storm, and we would expect that there would be some environmental issues, but we'll be ready to respond to that. Mike, do you have anything to add with that?
I'll just tell you that we,
Mike,
sorry. We do have an EPA representative embedded with the State Emergency Response Team right here, right now, and ready to go.
Anything else? Is it 5 o'clock we're going to be back? Okay, we'll be back at 5 o'clock for another briefing. Thank you very much. Stay safe, everybody.